Hey, everybody, welcome back to the GX3 Media Podcast. We call it the Extended Cut Line. I'm your host, Nate Beyer, and I'm really glad that you're taking time out of your day to spend listening to me talk about some of our local sports issues, whatever. Again, we've been away for a while. I had intentions of dropping a couple episodes right around that Thanksgiving time. Things came up because, it's Thanksgiving. And then we ended up on a vacation and we came back. And honestly, well, again, we wanted to drop stuff. We just didn't get time. And then I had a computer get all locked up because security is tight, apparently, when you least expect it. I tried to do an update, and the update sent me to a blue screen that wanted numbers. I thought I fed it the right numbers. Anyways, that computer has been in the shop. It's been getting looked at. I think it's been cracked open. However, that means I am without a lot of the assets that I typically would have to build things like this audio file, some of the photo things we do. I had to rebuild most of my newspaper pages. It's kind of been a really, really messy, sloppy week or so. Great for the holidays. Anyways, today's major content, we're going to hit on it, not right now. We're just going to tease it. Again, we're going to talk about some conference misalignment, let's say. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of our sports news. We've had cool things happen. Like I said, I went on vacation. I actually took a vacation space in a sports calendar time. I don't normally do that. Actually, I take that back. We do, but for some different reasons. So let's start with that. Let's start with this quote unquote vacation, which actually kind of was. Normally, after Thanksgiving, at least for like the past 10 years or so, I have made it my point, or I've made it made a point to follow the Turbo Volleyball to their national tournament. They usually end up out in beautiful, sunny Sioux City, Iowa, playing volleyball in the very last part of the season you could play ball in. I have kind of taken that opportunity to be a quote unquote working vacation. The last 4 or 5 years that I've gone out there, I'll go out, I'll enjoy myself, I'll work, the games, work after the games, try to do some different things to plug and promote that team while we are out there. And then I come home and I'm really officially ready to start in on our winter sports season. This year, that routine was broken. Viterbo didn't make it out of their opening round national tournament game. They got beat by a team from, I think, Indiana, some team from Indiana. So they didn't get a chance to move on. They ended at home. I guess you can love it or hate it. If you lose your last game, I do like to ask that question. If you lose your last game, would you rather lose on the road away from everybody that kind of, supports you? Or does it make it at least a little more comforting knowing you lost at home in front of a generous crowd that was excited to see you do things? I don't know. That's a good question, right? Anyways, because Viterbo didn't get a chance to go to the other side of Iowa, I said, I guess we just have to keep working. Logan made a suggestion. Well, I mean, she's usually the voice of reason. And she said, we can still go on a vacation. And I said, I guess we could. So I said, let's just go the complete opposite direction of west. Let's go east. Let's go as far away from that tournament as we can. I don't want to pay attention to it. I don't want to know what's happening. I don't want to know what I'm missing out on. I think if you are a coach or a player, you know those kind of feelings when you lose a game, especially at the end of the season. You lose a game or a match that you think you probably should have had, and it just, you want nothing to do with anything that comes afterward. So I get it. When you are knocked out of a sectional, even maybe a regional final type game. Let's use the WIA basketball series for an example. Once your team gets knocked out, I think it's really hard to keep paying attention to a tournament. I mean, what is there? Unless you have another team from your own league, there's really no reason to continue paying attention unless you truly, truly love the sport. That's about the only reason for someone to pay attention. It's really hard to get casual fans. Let's say if you are a casual fan of Fall Creek basketball, they get bounced in the first or second round, you are probably not paying attention to the rest of that tournament. If you're in Lancaster and your team makes it to a sectional semifinal, you might kind of track the team that you played, But if they lose that next game, you're kind of out. You're not really paying attention. I completely get it. Anyways, let's get back to the matter at hand. We took a vacation. We went east. The caveat, or I guess the goal, it's hard to have a vacation without a destination. So I said, can we come up with any cons in that direction? One of the things that Logan and I have started to enjoy the past couple years. We've gone to a number of cons, number of, I guess, I hate to say Comic Cons because it's not just comics, it's a lot of just pop culture conventions. And we found something in Columbus, Ohio, and something on kind of the eastern side of Pittsburgh. And the celebrity guests looked interesting. And we always kind of like to see who we end up with for vendors. Because honestly, as with all the, you've got the celebrity portion. If you've never gone to a con, I'll kind of explain it this way. Number one, I never thought that I would be a con person. But I really like the atmosphere and I like the people. And number two, it's the celebrities are one thing, but I've actually really come to enjoy the artists and the vendors because basically it's I guess I put it this way, it's an arts and crafts show, but with cool stuff instead of old lady stuff. Sorry, old ladies, if you're listening. I'm not interested in crocheted anything, knitting anything. That's not my thing. But I love seeing artists doodle draw with chalk, with pencil, with paint. I love some of the digital renders. There are so many cool things that I've seen. It's really cool. And again, there's always kind of a flea market type part to this thing as well, which is always kind of fun to pick through. And it's just, for me, it's super fun to find people with similar interests. And I think that's really the joy for me, finding, like-minded people that I can talk with about some of the what I consider cool stuff. No one around here is ever going to be able to have the same type of conversations about the hobby things that I do because my hobbies are very different. I'm not going to listen to country music and sit down at the local tavern because that's not my thing. But you want to talk about the artwork behind Masters of the Universe? Sure, I will listen to you talk about what the history behind some of that stuff, and I get excited about it. It's stuff that I'm motivated by. It's no different than if I was a car person, I would love to go learn about cars in different places. If you're a sports person, again, I'm kind of a sports person and kind of not. But if you want to go to a sports thing and talk sports, I can do that to a point. But once we get to the college level, I'm way out of my realm. The professional level, I can say stuff, but again, to me, it's just entertainment. That's all. Anyways, so we went east. We took a vacation. We were gone for the better part of a week, and we made we made the best that we could with kind of our limited time. And again, it was a lot of driving, a little bit of a hustle, a lot of standing in line, but we got to meet some cool people. Had some pretty cool experiences. I'm going to save all of those details for, I think, another episode. I think if we break this up and we keep things moving along, we're just going to tease it. We did some cool things. We met some cool people. I met some people that I didn't think I wanted to meet, and they turned out to be cooler than what I expected. We also got skunked on the main thing we went to do, and that has still just left a really bad taste in my mouth or bad kind of icky hole in my soul. We'll talk about that, like I said, in a different episode. But even though we were gone, it was hard not to pay attention to a couple things. Number one, I did keep up with NAIA National Tournament Volleyball because I kept getting emails and I was a little curious. Curiosity killed the cat. So I poked my nose into some of those emails to try to see who was doing what. And even though I missed being there, I also think it's good that I wasn't, good that we weren't. Mostly because it just, if you take it for granted, well, if you take it for granted, then you take it for granted. It was good to be away from it for a year, to see what else you could do. As much solace as routine brings, sometimes it's nice not to have that. It was good to get away. It was good to see something different. We did keep up with some of the high school scores, but honestly, they were a lesser priority. And let's face it, it's I mean, I've talked about this before. It's hard to keep up with scores right now. I think it's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard to be a general sports fan because we do not have one place to find information on teams. And it's a combination I will wholeheartedly blame or put blame on the leadership or lack thereof within the WIAA and how they've tried to handle this or not. Honestly, they should have been on top of this thing 25 years ago, but they haven't. And again, let's remember, let's not just blame the people that are working within the building. In Stephen's point, we have to blame our school administrators who haven't pushed them to do this either, because they kind of are at the beck and call of what our school athletic directors and administrators have pushed. And if they don't push it, it doesn't happen, and that's a problem. But now we with I don't want to say the demise, with the evolution. That's not that makes it sound too positive. With the changes that we've had with Wisp Sports, we've lost a very a hub of information. Our local newspapers don't keep up, can't keep up. They're terrible at it. There's no reason to. I mean, news moves so fast. I remember being even in college, again, in college in the middle or early to middle zeros, and I'd get a newspaper, and that's where I got my standings from. But that's because we weren't reporting scores online. The newspapers had the staffs, had the ability, I guess, to try to put some of those standings together. But now we don't really have those either. So many of our newspapers, I don't know, they struggle just to do anything. And quite honestly, when you can put anything online, everybody thinks it's free. Everybody goes to one location. So to put it in paper, what are we looking for? I don't know. Again, finding stats, finding scores, it's tough. So we didn't pay attention to scores much while we were gone. There were a couple of things we kept tabs on, but honestly, there are so many gosh darn basketball games. How do you keep track of it all? But we came back last week. I think, yeah. So we've had a full week now of stuff. Last week I hit a couple things. Thursday, Friday. The games I went to on Thursday, what did I hit? I think I quadrupled something. Oh yeah, I went to lacrosse. Onalaska was at Onalaska was at Logan for boys and girls, and went to Central for Central Holman boys. I thought that would be an interesting and kind of pivotal ball game. Toma was at Luther. Again, I saw cool stuff. Friday was probably more fun for me. I went to Black River Falls, Arcadia. I knew that the girls' basketball game probably wasn't going to be much. It wasn't. But the boys' game was a lot of fun. Again, I'm curious to see where the BRF boys go, because they're fun to watch. I think they're fun to watch. Arcadia looks a little undersized. They looked undersized in that game. They haven't necessarily been a true contender within the Cooley for a number of years, but I just don't think they're a team that you can sleep on. And I think they showed that. They were down, I think, a couple of times. They're down double digits at a couple of different points in that ball game, and they came back and they came back and they came back. I mean, shoot, they had the opportunity to, I think, tie the game or maybe even take a lead late after, trailing pretty late in the ball game. So as long as they continue to play with that never give up mentality, I don't think you can sleep on them. I'm really kind of curious to see where the Cooley goes this year. I think everybody probably still expects West Salem to maybe be the cream of the crop again, because they have been, but I wouldn't necessarily count out a Black River Falls. Luther's been good. I think they've struggled so far this year, but I don't know. We don't have enough data to say that they're really, really bad or really, really good. So it's kind of I'm kind of curious to see where that goes. And GET's kind of had a nice start as well. Maybe a little surprising there. So again, the Cooley might be a lot of fun to watch. We all expect maybe the MVC to be a very interesting and convoluted conference title race, but the Cooley might be an interesting one to watch as well. Anyways, so that was my Friday. I'm sorry, I take it back. I watched some hockey as well, because Black River Falls also had hockey. Black River Falls is one of the nicest hockey rinks in the area. Yes, I know that it's one of the newest, but it's a great rink. It's a great place to watch a hockey game. Girls, boys, doesn't matter. And there are some older rinks in our area that don't come close. They're either dark or dingy, they're too big, the layout's bad. I don't know. Like they just, again, it's kind of like Viroqua. I am grateful that, and those communities should be grateful for being able to offer a sport like hockey in some of these small places. And I know that hockey doesn't hold the same popularity or participation numbers as it did maybe 15 or definitely not the same as 15 or 20 years ago. Um, but it's really cool we have hockey because once I go south of Iroquois, hockey doesn't exist. And I think that's a shame because it's a cool sport. I know nothing about it. I struggle to understand the rules. I know what the general concepts are, but for those schools who do have it, don't take it for granted because none of us in this area are that far away from losing those sports. Um, Again, participation numbers, expense, all of it. It's a constant pain, I would imagine, or a burden for a school district to continue to offer hockey. But I do think it's a really cool thing to offer. Yeah, I saw the third period. They played the Barron Co-op, and I think I saw one goal from each. So here's what happened in that game. After the first period, apparently, it was 1-1. My period, period 3, 1-1. But in the meanwhile, I think what happened in the second? There was just a scoring barrage like you wouldn't believe in the second. I think it was 9-2, 9-4, something like that. They're like 10, 11, 12 goals scored in that middle frame. The final was 11-6, I think. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, everybody was scoring until I showed up. Yep, that's how it goes. Anyways, we did that Saturday. I limited myself to two things: gymnastics and wrestling. West Salem hosted their gymnastics meet, and Toma had Toma Scramble. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was home. Most of that, even though we did have events that night, it was really cold. But I needed to try to get this new laptop up and running. I went out and bought another one just to make sure I could keep going forward. Again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, other laptop during an update gave me some sort of login thing or some sort of pass key that I couldn't get through. I don't know what I was doing wrong, and I couldn't get back into the computer. So my workaround was just to buy another computer. Now, for the kids that are listening, that's not necessarily the best way to do anything. If your car breaks down, don't just go buy another car. That is not being fiscally responsible. If a pair of shoes break, there's probably no great way to fix them unless you have a nice roll of duct tape. I have been known to do that. But for me, I absolutely needed something. I needed something so I could work on newspaper pages that I knew I would have to kind of rebuild. I needed the ability to cull and edit photographs. I knew if I had something new, I could upload or load all of the Adobe Creative Suite programs to allow me to monkey around with photos, edit, post, share, get things online, that sort of thing. Anyways, I spent the rest of Saturday night doing that and trying to figure out USA bracketing. Again, USA bracketing is the new home, I think, for all of our wrestling information. Again, when I talked about our stat and our statistical conundrum, wrestling's another one. What do? Track wrestling has been the home for everything for years, and now we're stuck with USA bracketing because of the just inflation in price, apparently, that track wrestling is charging schools and other things. I can't imagine that they haven't lost a ton of business simply because, again, you jack up your prices, people are going to disappear. Nothing should be free. For everybody out there, I don't expect any of these services to be free. They shouldn't be. We should be paying for them. I get that. But you have to, as a consumer, decide what's too much. Another one, WisconsinPrepHockey.net is the home for all the hockey information. I had a discussion with somebody who's in charge of their website because that website, when I started using it a couple weeks ago, I couldn't get to anything because all of these stupid ads kept popping up. Now, I understand advertising. You need it. It has to happen. But as I would all I wanted to see was what happened in this period. And as would look and study, the page would reload and I would get a full page ad, or I'd get a hanging ad on the left side that would take up half of my screen that I couldn't get rid of. There was no, it didn't look like there was an X button or some sort of button to close the stupid ad. So I had a discussion with the guy, and he felt the same way. Like, hey, we got bought out by a company. They're putting ads everywhere. It's a little crazy. And within like the day that he and I were talking, they pulled the plug on the ads. Now, this is a really ballsy move, and I want people to understand they didn't have to do this, but they're trying it. Hey, we're gonna pull the plug on the advertising. We're gonna just go without most of our ads because all of these little pop-up ads are killing our website and making it not functional. So they're looking for private donations to help fund the quote unquote freeness of prephockey.net. All right. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. Every media outlet that uses it should be paying something for it. And I know that won't necessarily sit well with some, but again, I looked at how much we use it. I use it for my work with the Monroe County Herald and for the Cast and Record because we've got hockey teams, but I also look at it with how we need it or rely on it for some of the GX3 media stuff. And I said, yep, absolutely. Logan and I had a discussion about how much we donated, and then we went and we dropped them some money. Why? Because I think it's absolutely worth paying for. Now, they said they only needed $8,500, something like that. They needed $8,500 by the end of the year to make it work, or to make it work where they wouldn't put ads in for this season, where they could go ad free for the rest of the 2025-2026 season. $8,500. You might think that's a lot of money, and it kind of is, but for what you get out of it and how many teams they serve, good golly, that is a piece of cake as far as I'm concerned. Every hockey team in the state of Wisconsin, girls and boys both, should be able to afford $100 or $200. Maybe it's, $10 a head for kids on a team, up to like, $200 or $300. Again, there should be value associated with things that we appreciate. And if every team ponied up and paid the $150, $200 a pop, that $8,500 would be taken care of lickety split. Now, some are going to balk at that idea, but I'm putting my 2 feet down. It's a service. You should have to pay to use it. Hockey people, they have money. It's not a poor person's sport. The sticks, the gloves, skates, all the stuff, ice time, these parents are used to it. They travel. I know what they do. They're as crazy as the volleyball people, except for with a lot more money. They're as crazy as the soccer people might be, but with a lot more money. Hockey teams can totally find a way to afford a measly $100 or $200 extra to have a wonderful website that houses all of their information for, I don't want to say perpetuity, but again, I can look back 10 years from now, or 10 years back from now, and I think still find statistical information. That is worth something. But there should also be hockey fans out there that, feel compelled to drop money into the hole to help it out. Like I said, even from a media perspective, if every media outlet, dropped, if you have a bunch of teams, drop $100. If you have only the one team, drop $50. What's $50 for all access to all that information over the course of a year? To me, totally worth it. We need to pay for the things we find value in. I talk about it as a small business. I see how other businesses try to operate. I see how people don't want to pay for things and they wonder why they get junk. Yes, there's a reason you go to Dollar General. You're going to buy junk. There's a reason you get the type of the quality that you do from stuff from Family Dollar. I get it. You can say you don't have the money. I understand that to a point, but the things you find value in, pay for. I think that's a simple thing to kind of take forward. If nothing else, it's a way to say thank you, especially for our online resources, because we just aren't in that mindset as a society. We aren't in the mindset of having to pay for that because We paid for the internet. So everything there is free. Now I paid for the internet. I own everything there. We just can't think that way. Anyways, did I sidetrack myself? All right, let's try this. I'm going to remind everybody. Remember, this is the Extended Cutline Podcast. I am Nate Beyer for GX3 Media. This is the GX3 Media Extended Cutline Podcast. We're glad to be here. So glad you're listening tonight. Today, this morning, I don't know. If we post this, if we're able to get this out today, you guys could listen to this tonight, tomorrow, the next day, afternoon, brunch time. All right, the thing I wanted to talk about, the big topic I wanted to talk about today, conference misalignment, realignment. Again, I struggled with which direction to go with our headline, let's say, for this particular episode. I wanted to try to settle the show up a little differently. I wanted to have a major topic. That's what we're going to talk about next. I wanted to anecdotally touch on some other things just so that you see how my life is. You can hear some thoughts and opinions that you can hopefully agree with or disagree with. Again, I'm okay with either one. And I want to hit kind of on this big topic, which is conference realignment, misalignment. Or let's put it this way, conference misalignment. See, that's a question mark at the end. You can hear it by the way that my voice went. And the reason I wanted to bring this up was because the WIA and their conference realignment task force or whatever it is, just proposed, they just did some voting and some moving on some schools that wanted out and in and around and whatever for some different conferences. Locally, the big one for us was Viroqua. Viroqua wanted to get out of the Coulee, and I think they were trying to get into the Southwest Wisconsin Conference, and that request was denied. And quite honestly, I celebrated that. It's not because I don't want what's best for them, but I think what's best for our conferences is not necessarily that move. Not that move at this time, like that. And I think when it comes to conferences and our conference alignments, and I hear about it in the Coulee, I hear about it in the Bluffs. Why? Because we have one school in either that has done a lot of winning. However, before that winning happened, nobody really cared, right? We've got these schools that have captured kind of the lion's share of the winning across all sports, or at least it seems that way. And people are unhappy, especially those who are at the bottom of the pile all the time. So they're unhappy because we can't get anywhere, because this team at the top of our conference, we can't beat them. We can't compete with them. So we should jump conferences, or even better, let's stay in the conference, but let's get them out because it'll make it easier for us. Okay. So, is that the right idea? And again, I don't support those notions. I don't know. Like, I don't. Because one team is winning all the time doesn't mean you should get rid of them. Just because a team is losing all the time doesn't mean you should get rid of them either, because they're holding you back. However, much like in football, I think it's okay to ask the question, are we okay with our conferences, or should we really take some time to reevaluate our overall conference alignments? I think that might be a better question. Instead of individually who should go, who should stay, they're quote unquote too good, or you're going to hear it and as we move along in this discussion, private school this, private school that, suburb school this, urban school that. Sorry, within every league, you will have an engine and a caboose, and between that, you will have a bunch of train cars. The order will shuffle, but that's just how it is. In the world, we have lions and we have zebras. Lions eat zebras. You don't want to be a zebra? Well, then you have to find a way to run faster or transform into a lion somehow. So anyways, let's look at this Coulee Conference conundrum, okay? I know Viroqua said they wanted out. They've struggled to compete in nearly every sport. And I mean, again, I've watched them perform for the past a little over 15 years at this point in time. I get it. All their sports do struggle. I don't think it's the conference that they're in that is the problem. I think the problem is within their own community, how they're building sports, how they're building their sports up or lack thereof. Some communities, again, I've studied a number of different schools. I study the wins and the losses. I've done it for enough years where I can see there are some schools that are athletic schools and some schools that are just not. The community makeup is different. However, just because you're not athletic doesn't mean that you're never good at sports. There's always that team that breaks free. Viroqua Volleyball had a really nice fall. They ended up losing in a regional championship game, but again, they found a way to have some success that they really haven't had for quite a long time. Can you build on that? Can you make that better? The answer is yes. But just by moving conferences doesn't necessarily make you better. That's the thing. You have to take care of everything at home before you can actually be better someplace else. I mean, that's maybe part of my argument for keeping them there. It's not the rest of the conference's fault. It's their own. They need to work on things themselves in order to get better. And maybe that community just can't pull it together athletically. And quite honestly, they offer a lot of sports. Mauston has the same problem. Can Mauston be good at every sport? Absolutely not, especially in the spring. I've talked about this in the spring before. Girls track and field, girls soccer, girls softball. Are any of them good? Track and field has had the most success, but they've also had the most stability in coaching. But if you think about it, if you want to do any of those sports right, you need 30 girls to do track right. I think you need 20 to 30 girls probably to do soccer right. You need at least 20 girls, probably closer to, again, you're looking at 20 to 30 girls to do softball right, because then you can have a JV and a varsity and backups within that. And when you only put out 10, 10, 10, we just don't have the participation numbers. You're spreading your actual athletic kids too thin. Let's say you have 5 really good athletes. 1 goes to softball, 2 go to soccer, 2 go to track and field. Okay. So let's say your 5 best athletes are split 3 different ways. What do you do? The concentration of potency is watered down. And I think Viroqua's had some of that problem too, where you offer a lot of sports. Look at it in the wintertime. Now that you have girls wrestling, you still have a girls hockey program that limps through year to year. Again, bless their hearts, but it takes a couple bodies away. You still have a girls basketball, okay? And you still have gymnastics. So you got 4 options of things you can do. If you only have 5 good athletes and they split 4 different ways, that concentration of athletic ability is really watered down. The big thing for me was keeping Viroqua in the Cooley. Again, it didn't make sense for them to go into the SWC by themselves. Now, if you wanted, I could get behind Viroqua and Westby going together into the SWC. It's not that I don't think Viroqua is a good fit for the SWC. I think that they are. I think Viroqua and Westby would be a better fit together. Number one, you keep your rivalries. Everybody whines and cries whenever we talk about moving, football teams around because, we lose this rivalry and this rivalry. All right. Well, Viroqua and Westby have an interesting rivalry. I get it. Now, a number of their sports probably should be co-op together based on their numbers. But again, let's say your big ones like your basketballs, again, it's nice to have that rivalry, right? It makes it fun for both communities when they play each other. However, if you do eliminate that, it does take some of the fun out of the 2 towns being next to each other. And Viroqua and Westby both would fit into the SWC with your Lancasters, your Prairie du Chien, your Richland Centers, Plattevilles, Dodgevilles, River Valleys. There we go. That's all of them. And now if you took those 2 schools and put them in the SWC, you're up to 8 schools. And to me, an 8-team conference is better for everybody. However, if you took those 2 schools out of the Cooley, now you only have, what are we down to? We're down to 5 schools left in the Cooley: Black River Falls, West Salem, Luther, GET, Arcadia. So we're down to 5 schools there. Okay, well, that's fine. What do you do with those 5? I don't know how you break that up either. Again, if you move a couple schools here and a couple schools there, what are you left with? So a year and a half ago, I proposed some conference overhauls, complete conference overhauls. And one of the ones I proposed was kind of a Cooley conference redone. And let's just not even call it the Cooley conference, but let's just put these teams together and let's redo some of our area leagues. And I think that was kind of the fun. That's what I wanted to hit on today a little bit. What if we built a new conference? Like I said, like our football conferences, we're reevaluating those every 2 years and moving teams around. I think that's the right thing to do. I think with the way that our football playoff system is set up, teams need to stay within your division. So we're basically getting to a district concept. So if these schools are all Division 5 football teams, the Division 6 needs to go play with the Division 6 schools. I mean, just the way that the metrics work out with the playoff, the playoff numbers, the playoff points, whatever, that's what needs to happen. And we almost need to do that with some of these other ones. And that's okay. It's okay to reevaluate some of our conference alignments. Keep in mind, the Ridge and Valley, the Scenic Bluffs are two of our oldest conferences in their current alignment. The Cooley Conference has been around a long time. Let's say long time means somewhere in the 70s, maybe even back into the 60s, maybe even back earlier than that. I know Royal played in the Cooley for 2 years in like 78 and 79. So at that time, the Cooley would have been Royal, I believe Viroqua, Holman, Onalaska, Arcadia was in that, and I'm missing one or two others. West Salem and maybe somebody else. I'm missing somebody. Maybe it was me. Yeah. Anyways, Royal, so Elroy to Arcadia. That's a haul, and I get that. But if you looked at our enrollment numbers, it made a lot of sense. Royal actually kind of floated through a couple of leagues in the 70s. We might have been like a Vacationland. I think that did exist at some point in time. It went to maybe we were part of this Scenic Central, maybe at some point in time, went into the Cooley for 2 years. And then we came into the Scenic Bluffs. The Scenic Bluffs and the Ridge and Valley were both formed in the fall of 1979. So if we do the math, 79, so 89, 99, 2009, 2019, we're looking at 45 years of the Ridge and the Bluffs existing pretty much exactly like they did 45 years ago. How similar are those towns, those schools today to what they were in 1979? Those are very, very different places. All of those places are different. All right. When Royal started at Royal, we were big. We were a 3 community school district. Enrollment was probably more than double of what that school is now. We were one of the bigger ones. But, look at where Brookwood was. When Brookwood added Wilton in the fall of 2000, Brookwood had about 30 kids in the class, 30 to maybe 35 in the class. And 25 years ago, that was an extremely low number. Nobody else was that low. Very, very, very few schools were in that boat. But everybody else has kind of caught up to them. I think their numbers are 40s, 50s at this point in time. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is, again, our enrollments have changed. Our schools have changed. The demographic has changed in terms of, we've had different ethnicities move in or move out. We've had the different dynamic of urban versus rural kind of happen, or I guess I can't really say urban. Kids who live in town, again, this is always a struggle for me. I never considered myself a country kid because I lived in the middle of town. But let's face it, living in the middle of a town of 500 people, you're not urban. That's okay. But again, our communities have changed. Look at our downtowns of any of these places. Even 15 years ago, they looked different. 20 years ago, they looked way different. You actually had businesses. You could support a number of people in town. Now, everybody that lives in a Kendall, everybody that lives in a Lafarge, Lafarge is a little different with Organic Valley, but let's say if you live in Soldiers Grove, let's say if you live in an Oliva or a Strum, where do you go to work? You aren't working in those towns. You are driving someplace else. You are driving probably 15, 20 miles away. Very rarely are you able to find a job in your town that can help support families. It's too bad. It really is. Because all of our towns are pretty cool. All of our downtowns, I hate seeing our empty buildings or empty facades. When I drive through any ghost town of a downtown, but that's how it goes. Again, lion eats the zebra, law of the jungle. The weak ones will, don't survive. And the dollars and the cents don't dictate running businesses at a deficit year after year. And I completely understand that too. So do we have to stick to, should we be beholden to this idea our schools should remain in these conferences simply because that's what we've always done? Or should we be progressive? Things change. Every 5 years, things are going to change. That's okay. And I think that's where we need to be. So, like I said, a year and a half ago, I played Hypothetical Man Story, and I kind of reworked some of these conferences. Viroqua is going to be the crux of my conversation today because, again, they try to get out of the coulee. So I think hitting them right on the head with, kind of where we can move them. They were part of my, the easiest conference realignment for me did kind of start with them and Westby. Now, some of this is because I end up going to Cashton a lot. I end up on Highway 27 a ton, and I see what happens back and forth. Viroqua, Westby, Cashton, these places are pretty, tightly linked one to another. The people are pretty similar. The communities have similar makeups. All of these communities have different positives about them, and a lot of it is the fact that they are on a major artery, which is a state highway. That does make a big difference. You have commerce coming in and through your communities on a daily basis. That allows for economic growth. If you don't have that, you're in trouble. We've been pretty fortunate in Wilton to have a little bit of that. So I feel like our town's been a little exempt. But even then, you need to have the right people in place to put your town in a position to be successful. Anyways, so what I did is I kind of redid the coulee. But again, remember, we're not going to call it the coulee. We're going to call it a whole different conference name because we have to. I think we almost have to. You can't just keep calling it the same name without having some of those past associations. So you need to cut ties, make something all new. But if we were really going to allow Viroqua to move into something else, I actually think this proposed grouping would be a better fit for almost all of these schools. I think it would be a great alternative conference that would satisfy some of our enrollment issues, some of our geographic issues. Definitely would be a very even, in my opinion, a pretty even competitive field. And maybe that shakeup leads to other schools going other places that make stronger conferences for, with all those same rules and parameters. So again, here's my proposed conference. We're just going to run it right down Highway 27. We're putting Viroqua, Westby, and Cashton all in this conference. All right. So just so you're aware, based on the enrollment numbers on the WIAA website, again, their website is a good resource. Again, I know I knocked them down earlier, but their website is a great resource for certain things. I just wish we could get all of our history there, because I think that would be beneficial to them and to us and to our sporting news in general, our state sports in general. Viroqua has an enrollment of 343, Westby's at 336. Now, Cashton's at only 186, so you're thinking, it's almost double. But if we look at the competitive nature athletically between these schools, now remember, football is going to be exempt because that's taken care of differently. But if we put those three schools together, I still think competitively, it's pretty even. Those three. Let's start with those three. So we're going to add a fourth school to this mix. This school has about 225 for enrollment. That is Bangor. So Viroqua, Westby, Cashton, Bangor. Okay, does that make sense? I like that. I like that from a competitive standpoint. I think most of these teams can hang. My knock on any of these. So right now, Cashton is the smallest at 186. However, Cashton has been a team basketball-wise, volleyball-wise, that has flirted with getting out of that smallest school division. And in a lot of years, again, the year that they made it to a sectional final in boys basketball, they bumped down into Division 5 when I think 4 or 5 years prior, they're all up in D4. D4, they can't compete. Well, it looked like they couldn't compete. I think that they could. However, my knock on them is always going to be scheduling. They always schedule small schools. They never schedule much in terms of Division 4 or that not bottom division. And I think that does hurt them. They're holding themselves back because they're scheduling geographic nearby schools instead of some tougher competition, bigger schools that are more equal to their size. I get it. You need to play some of the teams that are close to you because that just makes sense. However, if you want to be good, you've got to step out. You've got to go beyond what you know to get better. And I think this would help Cashion elevate their game because now you're playing Westby's twice a year. Again, that's another good rivalry matchup. You don't think people from Cashion want to beat people from Westby and vice versa? I mean, Westby's bigger than Cashion, so Cashion goes in with a chip on the shoulder. Westby doesn't want to lose to that little guy next door. Yes, we're going to have some fights in the parking lot if we do it right. Actually, I don't think people really get like that anymore. But you see what I mean? We have some of those slobber knockers. Cashion still gets to keep the rivalries with Bangor. I think that works out well. Now let's add another school to this. Let's keep going. Let's go to the north. So now we're going to add Melrose Mindoro into this as well. Melrose Mindoro is the southernmost school in all of the Dairyland Conference. They have an enrollment of 225 kids. So that matches Bangor. They're bigger than Cashion. They're right in that mix with Viroqua and Westby. Now, if we look at these 5 schools, again, Viroqua, Westby, Cashion, Bangor, Melrose, Mindoro, there happens to be a fair amount of overlap. They play each other in a lot of these non-conference games. Now we're just going to make them be league games. I do think it works. The travel from Viroqua to Melrose is pretty easy. Down Highway 27, hang a left before you get to Cataract, and you're basically there. Again, geographically, it makes sense. It does work. So, but we only have 5 though. We're trying to get to 7. 7 is kind of my, I would love to get to 8, but I think we might only get to 7 for this one. And maybe you guys have some different ideas of what we can do with this. So let's keep moving. So let's go add another school. I'm going to add Luther to this mix. Now, Luther is already in the coulee with Viroqua and Westby. Luther has started to play Melrose Mindoro in a number of sports. That's okay. Luther plays Bangor in a number of sports, most of them actually. That's okay. Luther is typically not the world beater in most of these sports. They just missed out on a conference title in volleyball, but again, they haven't really been a true title contender for a long time in the coulee. They used to be really good at softball. I think right now they're probably middle of the pack. Girls basketball, I think they will challenge teams, but again, they're probably not at the top of the pile this year. Boys basketball is, like I said earlier, we don't really know where they're going this year. They're usually competitive, or they have been recently. I think they would be a tough out. But again, Bangor's had wins against them. Melrose Mindoro has challenged them when they've had good teams, have not beaten them. Again, I think that's a good mix. Luther's enrollment, again, I know they're a private school. I do not care. 259. And again, athletically, I think they fit. So now we have 6, right? So we need one more school. This is kind of the tricky one because I don't know where you geographically. I'm trying to keep it kind of tight together. I need to go check one enrollment I forgot to write down. Okay. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm going to write it down anyways. All right. So I've got a couple of candidates that I would maybe toss in. Now, I have no problem for the most part. If you really wanted, if you're going strictly based on enrollment numbers, the only other school that makes sense would probably be Aquinas. They've got about 338 for enrollment. That's going to send shivers and cries through everybody's eyes and ears and mouths. Because again, private school, this and that, again, I do not care. However, they really want to play in the MVC, and I get that, and that's okay too. Again, based on pure just enrollment numbers, it does make sense. But let's leave them out for the time being. So I've got 2 candidates, 2 schools that would make sense. And the one's kind of a conditional. The other one would be as it is, and it would maybe only last for a little bit, and then you'd have to probably find a new partner instead. But I'm going to go with I'm going to add Brookwood in. I'm going to say Brookwood could be a good fit with this. Their enrollment's listed at 181, so they're just a touch smaller than Cashton. Again, they compete with Viroqua and Westby, so those are the two biggest schools in the conference. They do overlap with Luther for a couple of things here and there. They already play Bangor. They already play Cashton. They already play, I think, the crossover with Melrose Mindoro here and there. I don't think that is a terrible fit. Geographically, kind of right in the nest of everything. Pardon the pun, because they are the Falcons. Brookwood doesn't not make complete sense. The other one that you could make an argument for, it's a little conditional. I would consider taking Kickapoo, and here's why. Kickapoo's enrollment's only 166. However, if they did the right thing and combined all their sports with Lafarge, like in my opinion they should be doing, you would have an enrollment of a little over 200. So that puts them right in the mix. Again, athletically, they compete with a Viroqua and Westby. They already play them. In some cases, I think Luther would be a tough fit for them. In some cases, Bangor would be a tough fit for them. But much like with Cashton, I think that they would find ways to elevate their game. Right now, they're a little bit of a big fish at times in kind of a small pond, the small Ridge and Valley pond. And until you kind of get pushed, there's no reason to get bigger, better, stronger, faster, whatever. Like I said, looking at the trends, I know Lafarge wants to keep their own thing. I know Kickapoo and Lafarge have what we consider a rivalry, but let's face it, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. The right thing to do is to co-op them up, put them together, make them work together like two neighboring communities. And I think that they would fit this conference. As long as they were together, they would fit this conference, I think, pretty well. People just have to buy in. When we're going to do some things that are out of the ordinary, you have to buy in. And if you don't get buy-in, much like a team, if you don't buy into what your coach is selling, it's not going to work. So again, let's put it this way. We have a Viroqua, a Westby, a Cashton, a Bangor, Melrose, Mindoro, Luther. I'm going to put Brookwood in for sure. And the Kickapoo / Kickapoo Lafarge, as long as we put them together, we would have something. Is that a good conference? I think that's an interesting conference. I think that, again, you're still going to have competitive teams come out. There was a time when Westby boys basketball would have blown the doors off of everybody in this alignment. There was a time when Melrose Mindoro girls basketball would have blown everybody out of the water. But remember, Melrose Mindoro girls also were at a high point when the Bangor girls were at a high point. You could have had two state finalist girls basketball teams come out of the same league. Think about that. Think about cross country. Viroqua's been good, strong. Brookwood's been really good, strong. Westby's had some runs here too, especially with the girls teams. And Bangor has had some recent success team-wise. But you know what? If you look back, Melrose Mindoro has also had some success team-wise. What would that be like from a cross-country point of view? How would this affect your track and field? Think about all the success that Brookwood has had individually. Think about all the success that Viroqua or Westby have had. Even Luther has had some track success here and there. Baseball would be interesting. Viroqua has had a really good program. Again, I think they're coming down a little bit, but that's fine. It's going to happen. Westby's been a very strong program. Bangor's had an exceptionally strong program. And you can't forget, Cashton's had some good years. Brookwood has had some above average years. It's been a while, but I think they're kind of on their way up. When you have to play up all of the time, it makes you better. You get pushed. I think Brookwood would find a way to step up. They would have to elevate their game. Have to. Same thing with Cashton. They would have to. They would get used to playing a step faster, a step more physical, more physically. Again, so this is just one of those conferences that if we rearrange our parts and think a little outside of the box, I think we could find a way to make a really cool thing happen. Now, the real question is, what happens to the remainders of all of those leagues? Okay, well, I'm going to save that for a different day. I'm getting close to that hour-long mark here. I don't want to go too far beyond that. And I've got places to be. But yeah, that's a good question. The MVC doesn't lose anybody, but the MVC probably should take West Salem. Now that doesn't leave you, that leaves you with maybe half of the Coulee. Where does the Coulee go? I don't know. Do you mix them up with the South Central and or the middle, maybe the middle border or the Dun St. Croix? Possibly. We probably have to form some new allegiances and alliances. Maybe you take some of the Dairyland and some of the Coulee and you mix them together. What do you do with the Scenic Bluffs and even the Ridge and Valley? Again, the Ridge is going through the Ridge and Valley teams, schools will see a lot of transition, I think, in the next, well, they already are. And we have to call a spade a spade. Declining enrollment hurts everybody. The fact that the fact is everybody wants their own basketball teams, but it's proven that you can't have it, as far as I'm concerned. If you can't have a JV program, you're only going to kill your varsity. You need to have multiple levels for your different sports, or you will never develop your talent at the right speed. And it leads to, yep, that's right, losing all the time. So do you hope that your Ridge and Valley schools partner up like what Weston and Ithaca are doing this year? Like what Kickapoo and Lafarge do in certain things. What do you do with Wazeeka? Where do they end up? What do you do with Crawford? What do you do with DeSoto? And even in the Bluffs are not immune to this numbers shortage either. Do some of those teams have to consider partnering up to make sports happen a little bit more? You can say you're going to take opportunities away from kids by combining. I look at it as creating better opportunities for your kids. Guess what? You shouldn't be playing varsity. That's not a good situation for you. So if we combine, we can put you on a JV. Heck, if we combine, we can put you on a C squad team so you can play other C squad teams because other teams are going to, buddy up. And now you can actually develop. You can have fun at that level because you're not good at that skill. Well, not yet. But if we build you there, build you at the JV, maybe by the time you're a senior, you've stuck around because you haven't had your head kicked in and you're willing to put in some time and be a really good practice player at the varsity level. That's okay. But we don't do that. We need to have our own team. We're not gonna do what we were taught through Sesame Street and in kindergarten. Show cooperation and work together. I don't care. I'm a big fan of co-ops simply because I want teams to be better. I want teams to push each other. And you're not a good sparring partner if there isn't really a challenge to get to your varsity level. We're just putting warm bodies out there, and that doesn't help your opponent get better. Anyways, it's okay to look at some of these conferences differently. And maybe one of the ways to look at our Ridge and Valley Scenic Bluffs, smush them together and do a large and a small with whatever's left, kind of like what the Dairyland does. It's okay to look at doing our conferences differently because, again, our communities continue to change and evolve. You put the right business in Steuben. Again, Steuben, I know it's not in the middle of anywhere, but you put the right business there, you're going to all of a sudden grow your enrollment by 100, 300, 400 kids for whatever reason. You slap an interstate through, again, let's say the interstate now runs from Black River Falls up to Neelsville. Well, Lincoln's going to grow, right? What do you do with that? We have to change and adapt. The blueprint that we've had for 50 years or almost, those rules maybe don't apply. As much as we want to keep those long standing relationships, you can still have them. They're just going to be in a non-conference sort of capacity. Or for this cycle, for these 5 years, we aren't together and then we're going to come back together. Conferences do evolve. Let's face it, we've seen conference realignment at the professional levels. I remember when the Brewers played in the American League, and I hate that they're in the National League. I don't know why it happened, but it happened. There was a reason. At some point in time, weren't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the same conference division, whatever it was, as the Packers? Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. And as we add and subtract and move teams, changes are going to happen. And maybe we need to. Maybe we need to do that. Even if you don't want to move, even if you don't want to change, sometimes the best things are to be forced to change. Anyways, that's going to be our episode today. I'm going to try to hit this thing right on an hour on the head. I appreciate you guys taking some time to listen to us at the Extended Cutline podcast. Hopefully, these ideas aren't completely without basis. Think about it. How would you take some of our area schools and realign some of them to create a better conference, 7 or 8 teams? Can we get a more competitive league? Can we find a way to make, again, no matter what, you're always going to have your train and your caboose. There's always going to be a biggest and a smallest, a really good and a really bad. That's just how it is. But should we consider realigning every so many years as our communities change? Because that's what's happening. As our agriculture fields have died down, as our rural populations have shrunk, as kids decide we're going to go do homeschool instead of real school, or whatever, or no school. I don't know. I don't know what kids do for school. Do we need to play to that? Do we need to acknowledge that and recognize it and adjust accordingly? Anyways, thanks for listening. Like I said, I tried this before. Thanks for listening. The Extended Cutline Podcast by GX3 Media. I was your host, Nate Beyer. I appreciate it. I hope to see you guys at a game. Let's get warm again. Again, I loved our thaw that we had this week. It was wonderful. I'm excited to get all my assets back so my thumbnails don't look weird, and all of my, hopefully my logos can be saved, because all my logo files were on that locked up computer. I'd hate to have to rebuild that thing. Good Lord, that took me a long time to begin with. Again, I really appreciate you guys taking some time to listen to my thoughts and opinions. Hopefully this was informative. Please like and subscribe to all of our platforms. Again, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on the old Facebook. I think we're on X as well. Look up GX3 Media or Nate Beyer GX3 Media. Maybe it's even NBGX3 Media. We would love to get a follow from you. We would love for you to share and talk about some of the topics we hit here, and even in real life person. Again, I love meeting people in person. So if you see me at a game, come say hi. Please do. Never, ever hesitate. If you see me not at a game, just randomly in real life, come say hi. I would love to run into you. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you guys hanging tough with us here. We'll see you at the next game. We'll see you next year in some cases. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later. We're out. Be good.